What's up, traders, and welcome back to another YouTube video. It's been a while, it's been a minute. I've just taken some time off from any sort of putting out content. So I haven't been putting out any content at all. And this video is not to say that I'm back to putting out content, but I had an amazing setup, a great setup that was really nice and clean. And I thought, let me just share it with you guys. And if you get an opportunity to learn from it, then hooray. Right. So I'm gonna try not to make this a very long video. Let's get straight into the video. So as always, just to say my little disclaimer, remember I'm not licensed nor qualified to offer financial investment or trading advice. Everything I speak about on these videos is purely my own opinion. I do not recommend trading live capital, but if you do, game. So I was obviously looking at and I was looking at this for my mentorship group, which I do share my setups in there. Every single setup that I look at, I do share it in the mentorship group. So I was looking at Jump 50, and I'm not going to go into detail into exactly what it is I was looking at, but hopefully you do get an opportunity to learn from this. So I was looking at Jump 50, and on the weekly time frame, we can obviously see that we were in a downtrend. How do we know that? We've got a high here, we've got a low over here, right? And at this point, we have a break of structure to the downside, and that then formed a lower high and a lower low at that point. So inside of this range, price had not retraced back into anything in that range. So on the retracement, I would just simply look for a significant area where I would want to sell. So what I generally tell my first year students, if I can call it that, or my first time students, I generally tell them to just grab your fib over, right? And anything from 50% on your fib upwards is an opportunity for you to be looking for sales. So you do not want to be selling below 50%. You want to be selling above 50%. And it would be the same thing essentially for buying. So overall, I am sell bias in this market. I'm expecting long-term sales to the downside, but obviously this is the weekly chart and we can simply still trade buys if we see legitimate opportunities to the upside. We do know, however, looking at this, that currently price is in an upward movement because we can see a huge impulse to the upside. As far as I'm concerned, based on how I validate structure, there is no valid structure that's created in here. So as far as I'm concerned, this was my lower high. This is my lower low, and I'm still waiting for a new lower high to form, which is either going to proceed to make a lower low or it's just going to pull back, right? So that's essentially what I am looking for currently. So with that information, we can simply drop down to a lower time frame. We know that we're in a long-term bearish trend, but since there's no valid structure that's created in this pullback to the upside, I will be expecting a retracement or a short continuation to the upside. So I would take that information and we drop down to the 4-hour chart. So on the setup, I've sent a setup for a buy, and hopefully you'll be able to establish that based on what we speak on now. So what we can see here, in fact, what we can see here is, as I explained on the higher time frame, we can see a clear bullish trend to the upside, right? Depending on where you want to put your highs and lows. As far as I'm concerned, that's a major low, that's a major high, that's a major low, and that's my next major high. So as far as I'm concerned, this is the higher low, this is the higher high. Now, with that being said, we see that price did retrace. So this was a zone that I had on the higher time frame where I was looking for a sell-off. I'm not going to go into detail as to what that zone is at this point, unfortunately. So looking at this, we can see that this was the last structure created to the upside, okay? Let's remove that. So this was the last structure created to the upside. What do I mean? This was the last higher high, higher low, higher high, right? So now what I'm looking for is once price taps into that area, I'm looking for a shift in market structure. Right. So what we can see here is that market structure shifted. How do we know? We have a higher low that formed a higher high at that point, and then that higher high broke this low and created a lower low. Now, this, for me, as far as I'm concerned, is a shift in market structure, but it does not mean that the trend has changed to the downside. Why? Because a downtrend creates lower highs and lower lows. So far, currently, we have a higher high that created a lower low. So we don't have a lower high that created a lower low. So that's essentially what I would wait to see created. And as a result, that's then when I would consider this a quote unquote bearish trend. So now we can see, okay, so I had this as my last push to the downside. Now I need to see a correction of this move that's either going to come back and form a lower high somewhere around this area here. We can use the same concept of the fib, and we can take a fib from this high here because that's the last high down into this low, and we can expect to sell anywhere above the 50% mark, right? 50% mark. So that would be the general area. I'm not just saying sell as soon as it gets to 50%. When it gets into that area, you want to begin to look for confirmations that, okay, it's starting to turn and go down again. Whatever your confirmations may look like, this is the area in which you would look for it. Now, I'm not too much the type to say, hey, use my type of confirmations. Any confirmation you look at, whether it's a head and shoulders, whether it's a double top, whether it's a RSI divergence, or whatever it may look like, you would generally see it happening in this area. Now, for me, I have a more refined area that I'm looking at, and this area is basically here, where I'm looking to see price come in and create the new lower high at that point and sell off. So with that being said, I now have grounds to expect price from this point to make its way up, right? And I can use that as an opportunity to buy because this is then a 4-hour chart. So what I've done now is I saw the fact that, hey, price was coming and rejecting here multiple times. So I said, maybe price is failing to break because had it wanted to form a lower high here, what do we know about a lower high? Sorry about my scribbling. What we know about a lower high is it should proceed to form a lower low, but we can see that price was rejecting multiple times, right? So I then took that information and I dropped down to the 30-minute chart. I will try to insert my screenshot of the trade that I was looking at with the guys. But if not, then I'll just simply post it on my IG and you can go have a look at the Forex amateur. I think it's underscore. It's the underscore Forex underscore amateur, like that, right? So looking at that, now I know from this point onwards, I was expecting a push to the upside. So I followed this trend. Now I was like, okay, backtrace from here. Where's my last lower high? That's there. As soon as that lower high is broken, I would expect to see price trading to the upside. What I can see thereafter is price then just came and formed another lower high, but this lower high failed to go lower. So now this is grounds for me to start looking for a trade because why? Lower highs are failing to create lower lows. So what I noticed is after, in fact, let me just put a circle over here. After this lower high in here, which is the dominant high at this point, I see that price broke structure at this point to the upside. So I was like, okay, now what we have is we have a higher low, right? A higher low that created a higher high. So what does a bullish trend do? A bullish trend creates higher lows and higher highs. So do I have a higher low? Absolutely. Do I have a higher high? Absolutely. So that's ground for me to take a buy trade. So what I then did, what we then can do, obviously, I was looking at a specific area, which you'll then see on the setup, but I was looking at this area here for buys, and you can see that price did come and pierce through it, but ultimately it did react from there. So what you can do, however, is take your fib from down here up to this high here, because that's where your higher high was, but I'm going to drag it across just so that we can see. But just to explain to you, you can see that my fib is anchored on, let me just grab an arrow. My fib is anchored on that low and that high, right? And then what did I say? Anywhere below 50% for a buy is where you can take a buy. Well, that made no sense. But anyway, so you can see that price came multiple times into this area here. Now, you could have taken any of these trades and you'd still be able to come out on top. So you've got a double bottom here, price went up. You've got another double bottom, price went up, and so forth. But like I said, for myself, what I was looking at was a specific zone for me to buy from. And that was all the way down here, right? So what I noticed was, okay, I waited for price to come into this area, and then I repeated the same step again, right? We've got lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, and then price broke structure to the upside here. So now we've got a lower low that formed a higher high, right? What does a bullish trend do? A bullish trend creates higher lows and higher highs, right? So what I did was I took a trade off of this area in here, right? I took that trade and I simply took my profits at this high here. Why did I do that? Because this is simply a high risk trade at this point. Why? Because a bullish trend creates higher lows and higher highs. Up until such a point that this created a higher low and a higher high, this was still a bearish market. So what do we see right now? We see a lower low, higher high, and then we see a higher low that's now creating a higher high. So we've now got a break of structure that came from a higher low. So this is now a confirmation. So all that simply means for me is once I have a confirmed high again in this area, based on how I confirm my structure points, which I obviously share with my students. Based on that, should this confirm as a high, then I would then have a new range, which would be from here to wherever the high is confirmed, and then I would look to take another buy below 50% of that range. So right now, we have no confirmation that this is going to go bullish, but what we do have is we have a high probability setup forming in that we've got a lower low that created a higher high. So lower low that created a higher high, then we've got a higher low that created a higher high. As far as I'm concerned, that's grounds for me to take another buy setup. So what am I looking to do now? So I'm simply looking to see price come back. There's a general area that I'm looking at, which is more or less around here. And that is where I'm looking to hop into more buys at this point. Where is my target? I'm simply looking to target that same dominant high that I was looking at when I first dropped down to the 30-minute chart. You will recall, I did call your attention to this high here, right? So as far as I'm concerned, that would be my first take profit, right? Because as you can see, this high hasn't really been taken out yet. So if I take any buys inside of this range, that will be my first take profit. And ultimately, I'll be looking to go up to there. So that's as far as I'm going to go with this conversation. Perhaps I can do a follow-up video. We really don't know at this point. I pray you did learn something. I pray that this video did add something to your journey. Until next time, it has been a pleasure as always to share with you guys. And I'm wishing you a blessed and profitable remainder of the trading week.